This is the story of the time I interviewed with Meta, got a job offer, and rejected it. Although this was a while ago now, I am sharing it for two reasons. One, I was recently reminiscing about it, and I was wondering if I even made the right decision back then. And two, I think my experience may be beneficial to you if you're going through something similar. Let's go back to late 2021. Back when Meta was called Facebook. I had applied to work at Meta as a product design engineer through this contracting company. So I didn't directly apply on Meta's career website, but I was working with a recruiter at a contracting company, and they would basically take my application, submit it to Meta, get feedback from Meta, and then interview me that way. Anyways, about a week after applying to Meta through this contracting company, they tell me that Meta wants to interview me. I was really excited at first, and then they sent me the role that they want to interview me for, and it wasn't what I expected. It was this. It was a hardware engineering role at Meta. It was a 12-month contract with the possibility to extend it to full-time after these 12 months are over, and they paid $48.09 USD per hour. That ends up being exactly 100K per year. Looking at the job summary here, according to it, I'd be doing research, design, and testing on computer equipment. Now, if you look at the job responsibilities, it seems like I'd be working in a lab on product prototypes and monitoring equipment. I mean, the responsibilities are a bit high level. And if you look at some of the skills and education required on this, I needed a basic understanding of telecommunication systems, circuit boards, and design software. Also, I of course needed to have a degree in engineering. But I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw this, I'm like, why do you want to interview me for this position? This is pretty different than the experience I had on my resume at the time. Like, most of my experience at the time was CAD, DFM, DFA, like very mechanical engineering heavy. This seems to be more hardware and electrical heavy. It also wasn't really what I wanted to do because I wanted to work as a design engineer using CAD software, going through a product development process, things like that, rather than working in a lab doing research and testing. But I'm like, you know what? Let me do the interview. I guess I got really nothing to lose. But yeah, I didn't really have that much experience with telecommunication systems or circuit boards. Aside from a couple of courses I took in my undergrad, it's not like I ever actually worked with these kind of technologies. But you know, they want to interview me, so I'm not gonna say no. Anyways, the interview process was relatively simple, as it usually is for any role that you get through a contracting company. I had one with the hiring manager and one with another engineer. They asked mainly behavioral questions and nothing too technical. They also asked me about my experience at Tesla and what kind of projects I worked on there, and then they shared with me what a hardware engineer at Meta would be doing. In simple terms, you basically work at a lab, you're doing research, and you're also using lab equipment to build some basic prototypes and do a lot of testing. Obviously, it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but in the interview, I sort of asked the hiring manager if there is opportunities to move within the company if I were to get this position. Like after this 12-month contract, if I decided I want to transition to a different role, is that doable? He's like, yeah, this is something you can do, and a lot of people that had roles like this before have done it. But yeah, you would obviously need to complete the 12 months contract first before even thinking about doing something like that. I was like, you know what? Fair enough. And I guess it was nice to hear that it is a possibility. Then the interviews end, and the entire interview process was like a week long. I did my last interview on October 20th, and then on October 25th, I get this email, which was the offer. It was such a quick turnaround process, such a quick interview and hiring process. Like, you would never see this in today's job market. Back then, the job market was wildly different. Like, I applied. A week later, I got a first interview. Then a few days after that, I did a second interview. And then 5 days after that, I got the offer. Overall, I was like, in like what, a 2, maybe like 3 week process. Went from applying to job offer. Crazy. But yeah, anyways, this was the offer letter to join Facebook as a hardware engineer making $48.09 USD per hour. Adventus Global is the contracting company that I got this position through. I know they've helped a lot of people get interviews and roles at Facebook and Meta over the last couple of years. That being said, at the time, I was kind of left with this tough decision on whether or not to accept this role because it wasn't exactly the type of work I wanted to be doing, but it was Facebook. Like, it's just a brand name. Like working at Facebook is such a flex. So really, I'd only be accepting it for its name. But I rejected it. And you're probably wondering, why did I do something like that? Well, at the time, I was actually interviewing with another company. And in the second, third week of October, I had 2 job offers. One was the job offer from Meta as a hardware engineer, making $100K per year for a 12-month contract. The second job offer was with a startup called Serve Robotics, making $110K per year in a full-time role as a mechanical design engineer, which is what I wanted to be doing in my career. So when I was weighing both options and deciding which one to choose, I was looking at the pros and cons for each. And man, I'm like, well, I personally prefer to work for startups. I don't really care about big brand names. Serve Robotics gave me the title I wanted of mechanical design engineer. It paid more and it was full-time, so it gave me the illusion that it was more stable than Facebook. Obviously, I didn't know at the time what the future had in store. But yeah, literally the biggest reason for why I rejected the Meta hardware engineering role and accepted the Serve Robotics mechanical design engineering role was because of stability. I didn't want to do a 12-month contract at Meta and then have to worry about whether or not they're going to extend it. I wanted to have a full-time role where I know I'm going to be working there for a long period of time. I just wanted stability at my work, which is funny to think about now because I obviously know what happened a year after. I literally only accepted Serve Robotics because I knew it was going to be a company that I work at for years to come. But little did I know, exactly a year or so after I started working at Serve Robotics, they laid off half of the employees of the company, myself included, due to lack of investor funding. So I got finessed because the reason I accepted Serve Robotics over Meta because it was a job that I had assumed was gonna last over a year, but it didn't. So I don't know, so the reason I accepted Serve Robotics over Meta wasn't even like a valid reason looking back at it now. I really thought Serve Robotics should be much more stable, but I was like, what, a fresh grad, 22 years old at the time, so I wasn't very smart. Obviously, yeah, I ended up accepting the job offer at Serve Robotics as a mechanical design engineer. But do I regret that decision? Do I? Do I regret rejecting Meta? Well, I like to live a life with no regrets. But yeah, I was thinking about it recently and I was thinking about the what if. Like, what if I had accepted Meta? Like, what would my life be like now? Would I have maybe went from a hardware engineer into a senior hardware engineer and that would have been my field? Or would I have maybe gotten laid off from Meta after a year because Meta did like a bunch of mass layoffs a couple of years ago? Or would I have maybe become a hardware engineer then transition to something else? I don't know. Also, would I have even liked the job or not? Because it was so different from anything I've done before. All the internships and roles I've had before that were manufacturing engineering roles or design engineering roles. I hadn't really done hardware engineering before. I think knowing what I know today, probably I would have picked Meta over Serve Robotics. Because at the time, I truly didn't understand how volatile and unstable startups can be. Because I was really only 6 months out of uni, so I didn't have any wisdom. I didn't have the right headspace to make these smart decisions. I guess I was just kind of chasing money and tech and just seeing whatever company paid more. But yeah, that was the story of how I got a job offer from Meta, rejected it because it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. And I thought it was less stable in comparison to the job I ended up accepting, which was a mechanical design engineering role at Serve Robotics. Before I was inevitably laid off at Serve due to lack of funding a year later. So here are a few lessons I learned from this experience. 1, startups with less than $10 million in funding are extremely unstable. So unless you're doing like a short-term internship with them that's only like 4 or 6 months long, I recommend avoiding them completely. And if you're wondering, bro, how do I find out how much funding a startup has? Go to crunchbase.com, search up the startup name, and you'll get an idea of how much funding the company has. 2, getting into the company you like is more important than the exact type of role that you want when you get in. For very large companies at Meta, it is so much easier to just get in and then move around to get to your ideal role than to apply to the ideal role externally right away. 3, in your network, always maintain every possible connection that you have because you truly never know when you might need to reach out to someone. When I rejected the job offer from Meta, I wish I had stayed in contact with the hiring manager because he gave me a job offer, which means he thought I was a great candidate. And so maybe if like a year later, when I was laid off at Serve Robotics, if I had kept in contact with him, I could have potentially reached out to him and just been like, hey, I'm on the market again. Wanted to see if you're still looking to hire hardware engineers. I'd be happy to get on a call with you. Something vague like that would have been ideal if I was in contact with him. 4, getting a big tech company job through a contracting company like Advantis Global, which is the one that I worked with, is so much easier than directly applying on that big tech company's website. Because whenever I apply to the Meta job site directly, no matter how qualified I am for that position, I could literally be the perfect candidate for that position. They most likely won't get back to me, which is understandable because they have millions of people applying, so your resume will more likely get lost. But every big tech company like Apple, Tesla, Meta, Google, they all go through these contracting companies to hire engineers. And the recruiters that work at these contracting companies actually want to help you more than the recruiters that actually worked at the tech companies themselves. You know? So check out Advantis Global, Aerotech, Aditi Consulting. There's a bunch that you could reach out to, and the recruiters more often than not have connections to these big tech companies. 5, the job market in 2021 was unheard of. These companies were giving away job offers like it was nothing. Like, I didn't even fully clock it in. I had no hardware engineering experience. I only had design engineering experience. And he still wanted to interview me and give me a job offer for that role. What? That's actually wild. There was just so much money back then. There were so many more open positions and the salaries were much higher. And for specific roles, because there was so much money, they were less strict on who they're looking to hire. They just wanted to hire quickly. Like, genuinely, back then, people would do like a 3, 4, 6 month boot camp and then get a high 150K per year total compensation role in a big tech company. Now, you can't do that. Like a coding boot camp, for example, won't get you anything like that. You need to like have an undergrad and maybe a master's or something like that to have that educational competitive advantage and probably work on your own personal projects. It's very different industry, but it kind of goes to show you that the tech market, the tech job market specifically, is genuinely a roller coaster of crazy ups and downs. So you're gonna have your highs and you're gonna have your lows. The tech job market right now is a little bit towards the low, but it will go up again eventually. So there's that. But I guess at the end of the day, I don't really regret my decision because it is what it is. I think everything happens for a reason. Maybe there was a blessing in accepting Server Robotics or Meta that I obviously don't know, because at the end of the day, you'll never know the alternative. Anyways, I hope my experience and my story brought you value and you maybe find it relatable and something that you can take towards yourself. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.